Hello everybody, welcome back to Dawn of Man HP. I believe this is going to be the final episode in this series. We should be able to wrap up the Iron Age. And we're going to see last bits of combat here as we're getting attacked by raiders. A sizable group. So we've sounded the alarm. I'm going to do this a little bit slowly so we can see a few things here. We're staffing up. We're gathering in front of the entrance. And then we've got, you know, more of these transport posts out. And generally speaking, the animals, thankfully, are smart enough to run away when the raiders start coming. And that's probably a good time to close the gates. I don't just want to rely on fortifications here, though. Yep, you're running too. I'm waiting for everybody to open fire. Come in. Okay, now we're engaging most of them. But if I just sit down here, they'll pound the towers. So I actually need to take some more aggressive action. I'm going to select a group here from just inside the gates. We're actually going to open it up and sally forth, as they might say, join in the battle. There we go, and they're right here in front. So they got shields, they've got armor, they're well guarded and protected. And why are you not, you're not doing what I told you to do? So that's going to cost me. Come on. There we go. I might have triggered them too early. I maybe pulled some down from the platforms over, but go after everybody. Yep, we lost the platform. But that is the general idea. Yeah, success. We actually didn't lose anybody. I mean, if we lose a guard tower, not platform, but guard tower, we lost both of them. But I'm still not going to cry too much over that. Losing those compared to losing a whole bunch of people is much better. Resources can be replaced. The raiders don't attack that much. What can't be replaced, of course, as easily are your people. So we're going to go and take that alert off. And we'll need to rebuild these as we are able. Look, see, I'm building the wrong thing. Gah, there we go. So they'll go ahead and gather up the resources, rebuild those as they're able. Now, those transport posts, we have a whole bunch of them over here. We've got almost enough for all the animals. I think I'm going to stick with what we have all the way over here. And they sit there very patiently until they're ready to be used. Mostly cattle, but again, some horses. So all of that is working out very well for us. We are increasing our leather armor gradually. We need more, but we're at least moving in that direction. So that's helping us. And then we also have one new invention that I got a couple seasons ago, shortly after the end of the last episode. And that can be seen right here with our granary, which is now a staddle granary. It has 18 slots instead of 12. We're about halfway through rebuilding our granaries. And these are notable for the staddle stones, which are right down here at the bottom. And they're kind of interesting shape there. They are tapered, and then they have this round capstone on the top. They're actually multiple stones involved, the one on the bottom and the one on top. Most of the staddle stone examples that we have are of this shape, and it serves a couple different purposes. Obviously, stone is a stronger material to support a larger weight. Larger granaries and similar structures can be built on top of them. Possibly less obvious is the fact that the larger overlapping capstone also prevents rodents from climbing up and into the granary and protects them in that manner. Other designs were also used, such as in this granary in Spain, but the basic principle is still the same. It's elevated, and the curvature of the stones prevents easy access by any scavenging type of animal. I would be remiss if I did not at least mention the fairly high level of masonry craftsmanship that's required here. Still using nothing more advanced than basic hammer and chisel type of implements, shaping large stones, several at least for each structure, if not a dozen or more, to fairly exacting specifications. They need to be nearly identical to each other and they need to support a flat level surface. Next up on our hit parade is Hydropower, which allows us to build the watermill. I'm going to throw one up somewhere here. There we go. It's got to be next to the water. I'll let them get working on that. While we're doing that, it's worth noting that we have been able to trade for some more iron in recent seasons. So now we have this set up, and we're working on this one. So we're almost done with our fortifications on that side. Still would have much more to do over here, of course. And obviously this has ended up being bigger than what we needed, but it is still progress. Population is growing. You can see demographically here that we do have some aging going on, but a decent amount there. We're pretty good here. I'd like to have a few more plows. We're not doing bad. Animals are fine. And we're at like 98% welfare, 1,000 prestige. I mean, you can't ask for any more than that. The leather armor here, we're pretty much where we want to be on the shields. And if we look at our leather limit, we want to get up to, yeah, right now it'd be 76 and 152. So we have plenty of shields and we're almost there on the armor. So we're producing plenty of all of those things. So let's see, down here, we just need them to show up with the stones. I think they're coming in right now. This timing's going to work out good. There we go. So let's check out the watermill here. They've got stones facing the water, and they're building a foundation here. And there's our bottom millstone. There's the wheel itself. And there's the top millstone. Of course, that's the one that will actually turn. The way these works is you pour grain down into the hole, turn a crank, and the flour gets, or the grain rather, gets ground into flour in between the two stones. So, that is in place. What's the point? Well, from a game point of view, it's not a huge advance. It's important, but we have flour now. We're going to turn 3 grain into 3 flour, as opposed to the 1-to-1 relationship that we have with the mortar. So we can get rid of this. And given that it's 3 times as much as a mortar, I think 2 of these is probably sufficient. So I'm going to build another one over here. And then I'm going to take down all of our mortars and we'll just see how that works. But I think 2 is going to be close to enough, and if that doesn't work, I'll build a 3rd one. But that should, you know, obviously it's going to relieve more labor as we're 3 times as efficient with that activity. The Greeks are generally given credit for the invention of the water wheel itself and the tooth gearing, the 2 primary components in a water mill. But the Romans, Egyptians, and others also used them beginning as early as 3rd century BC. And they were used for more than grain. Sawmills were another common application. By the 1st century AD, complexes such as these ruins at Barbegal in France were built. This has been called, I think by archaeologist Kevin Green, the greatest known concentration of mechanical power in the ancient world. 16 water wheels were once in operation for roughly 200-year stretch, with a capacity of an estimated 4.5 tons of flour per day. That's enough to make enough bread to feed approximately 10,000 people. Even more fundamentally important to my mind than these impressive types of specifics is the fundamental new capability here of harnessing the power of nature to do work for our own benefit. Of course, this is not the first example in history of that. An obvious earlier one would be sailing vessels of various types seeing use at least as early as the beginning of the Bronze Age. But this is a more domestic, practical, industrial application, and certainly the first we've seen in Dawn of Man. So I think it's time to buy another upgrade this time. Let's take a look at where we're at. So we've just got a couple here, shields and mail. Those are both going to require more iron. And then this is going to be steel. So the only one that's really of immediate use to us is complex megalithism. It allows us to build the cairn. And I have issues with this one, but before I get to those, let's actually do what the game wants us to. I'm going to build it over here. It's another funeral building. It is the final funeral building. You can see 4 of the megaliths plus 20 stone and 20 mud. So this is a big thing. So I'm going to stick it down here on this hill. As you can see how big it is. And then if I can, I'll build another one up here after I get rid of these. But I don't think there's going to be room. I think it's just going to be an add-on here for us probably. So we have obviously got a lot of work to do to get this in place. We already have 3 megaliths out there, 2 that we've built the transports for, but the stone and the mud, not going to take that long. So we should be able to get this together without a huge amount of time passing. It was kind of amusing to watch the first couple megaliths that arrived about a year later. I went a little nuts with mining them out. We had more on the map than I thought. And we did have some casualties. One person died to a wolf. A few more died in the winter to hypothermia. I think there was 3 of them. But on and on the work went. And people pull these for a while, and then they'll drop them and go off another task. Other people will come in and help. And they kind of was this little bit of a race going back and forth to see which one of these would actually get there first. But these are the first couple. The others are further away. And here's our last megalith, which they instantly drop and walk away. Because they're tired and worn out. They need sleep, food, drink, just plain probably want some time off. And so now we have to wait for another volunteer to show up and start actually constructing the cairn. Looks like we've got somebody here. Yes, indeed. So let's pop in. I've got these upright blocks here that are a little bit smaller, or narrower rather, than the ones they're using for the stone circle. Perhaps they want to make them go further. Oh, looks like they're building out into some passageways now. And this is going to take a long time. It takes at least as long, I think, as the stone circle to construct. But now we've got another person helping. That will assist in the process. And the term cairn just means basically a man-made pile of rocks or stones. And early on, they were made in various sizes, shapes. Some were very large chambered ones, such as this. Others were just a pile of rocks on a trail somewhere to mark a burial site or to help with navigation of a particular area, to mark a stash of goods, or the end of one particular tribe's territory, the beginning of another, things of that nature. The larger chambered ones such as this were used for burial in many cases. They're called passage graves, but also they were used for other purposes. As I continue building now outwards further on the structure, ceremonial purposes, for astrological marking, for understanding the passage of time, or for, various annual celebrations, whatever. We're filling this in. But my biggest issue with these is when you build them. Because we're in the Iron Age. These were primarily built in the Neolithic era, thousands of years earlier. Now I get that they wanted to have a big burial structure, which a cairn does work for, and that they wanted it to be later in the game, but the timeline just doesn't fit. Another issue that I have is these right here. These markings on it, far as I can tell, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, we don't really have any evidence of that. I get they're trying to increase the aesthetic, but it's so garish. It doesn't make sense to me. In any case, we're continuing on. You can see you've got the passageways through in sort of the 4 cardinal directions, and then everything else built up around the outside. And it definitely is an imposing structure, to be sure. It's not one that you would, visit this city and forget. And more of these on top. I think we've got the, anything worth doing is worth overdoing type of approach here. Now we've got grass growing on these, but not so much up here. I think it's cool the way you can see directly through. And there it is, 3 knowledge for building one of these. So, from a game point of view, these have a limit of 20 bodies, which is twice that of our dolmens. So we definitely don't have a burial problem, and could theoretically take some of these down at some point, although I really see no reason to do so. You can see we have a very healthy prestige bonus from those as well. We get 100 if we needed that bonus still at this time. Here's a real-life example of a navigational cairn, much smaller type of one, obviously, on high ground in Switzerland. Can be seen for a long ways around. There's these smaller ones in Somalia, and it was quite common to have large groups of cairns in one spot. And this is an example of the much more imposing chambered passage grave style of cairn. But as you can see, and this is typical of these from everything I've been able to find, you don't have all the decoration, and you don't have a lot of build-up on top of or outside of the structure itself. Very impressive construction for the time. But I just think the game just got the time period wrong, and it wasn't really justified. And they also just, for whatever reason, overdid it. It was a later addition to the game in one of the post-release patches, and one of those places where I think they missed the mark some. And then, in the winter of '98, we finally reached the end of the line. We're able to purchase from the trader over the course of the past year reinforced shields and mail, and then grab steelmaking with our own knowledge points. So if we take a look at our armor over here, the shields require iron and logs, and the armor requires just plain iron. And we're not even done with our gates yet. Just having to import all of our iron really makes it so there's no point in waiting around just to build those items. We'd be building them just to build them, really, at this point. If we look over here, this is the most recent raider attack that just concluded. You can see the difference in the shields. This is the reinforced ones here versus the smaller oval ones that we had before. So then about the steel. Yeah, the steel is an issue. One of my final objection here to the game. We have iron and charcoal to make steel. Same for iron. It's not even, it's no more difficult. There is no further step involved. We have all the steel things that we can produce, and in terms of how effective they are, they give 5 more damage to melee combat if it's a weapon of that type, up from 175 to 200% modifier for the tools, and they also last 25% longer, taking a full 10 years to decay. And so it's superior in every aspect, as it should be, by the way, to iron. But it was simply not that easy to make in practice. The first major source of steel, at least, was in India, 500-600 BC, where it was exported to the rest of the world. But it was never in common use. That is, for everyday items, for, mass quantities of things that you just use on every object that you could put it to use on, until the modern age. There was no such thing as a steel age, and of course, indeed, there isn't in the game, because it was never that easy to make. So why would they have it be, just as easy as iron? I'm not sure. But one of the most common ways to make it, for example, was to combine cast iron with wrought iron, and then remelt all of that together to get the correct carbon mixture. And that just is an example of how you could have done different things here to really change it up and make it more difficult to produce steel, at least, as it should have been. But as it is, I'm left wondering, why is it even in the game? Because you don't go anywhere from here. Like, you can have it just to have it as a superior material, but if you're going to do that, I don't know, take it a little more seriously. Obviously, most things in the game are really done well. I would say over 90% of it, quite historically reasonable, if not accurate. But that part just is one of those that gets to me a little bit. So I'm going to take a quick look at our watermill animation, because we haven't seen that yet. This turns around, they're cleaning up from in here. And I like the way this works. Every once in a while, I think we're about to see it here, they're grabbing the grain from the pot, climbing up here and just dumping it in here, and that chute leading down into the millstones. Very nice. In any case, let's take one final tour of the city of Inception, which has lasted nearly a century in game and, of course, many thousands of years overall of history presented. The massive fields over here. And we have our place of refuge, sacred place, if you will. The stone circle, the 5 dolmens, the long time standing food dryers, skin dryers over here. Of course, down in this area is where we originally started in the clearing so long ago. And then all of our roundhouses, our stables down this way. This, of course, was the hill that the mountain lions would camp out on and that we fled the village from a few times early on. Across the bridge, more stables, more of a little bit of everything, another stone circle, and the cairn. The surrounding lands, we didn't go around much further than this. There's still plenty of stone out, except to get megaliths every once in a while. But we have really completed everything there is to complete here. And it's time to move on, time to let Inception and the city and the concepts within it fade into the background of history. So, thanks for watching this, everybody. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed doing it. And next I'm going to be doing a transitionary video about the emergence of empires, leading into the next series, which will be focusing more on that aspect and scale.